I hope everyone enjoyed the G-Man impressionist opening from the beginning of the last video, but fear not everyone, for he has returned for the beginning of this video to reprise his role. Take it away, G-Man.
Hello everyone, it's me, the G-Man, from the famous Half-Life series of games. FoofDeckman has reached out to me, the G-Man, to tell you what his review score is for Half-Life Alyx. And it is 4 out of 5! Hooray! I miss my wife.
Thanks as always, Mr. G-Man. You know, he sounded a little different, like he's under the weather, maybe the corona got to him, so everyone send their prayers for a speedy recovery. Thank you, G-Man. Anyways, like the G-Man said, my overall review score for Half-Life Alyx is a 4 out of 5, so if you're one of those people that just watch reviews for just the review score alone, then there you go. It's a good game, go play it, or if you can't, watch it on fucking YouTube. Motherfuckers. Now, this video is going to be quite long, and given the length, I'm going to be leaving time codes in the description so you can skip to specific parts of the video. I'm going to be starting off with my spoiler-free review of the game, and then I'll slowly move into my analysis part of the video. Obviously, after hearing my rating, you can probably understand that I enjoyed the game a fair bit. It's definitely the best VR game ever. That's not even some sort of over-exaggeration, that's genuinely how I feel. It's not like it has much competition though, but Half-Life Alyx definitely has the best feel to it. While many people were comparing this game to Boneworks, which came out only 3 months earlier, I can kind of see this comparison being made between them. Everything outside of the physics engine in Boneworks felt just kind of eh, while in Half-Life Alyx, mostly everything about the game clicked, even the story, which I'm surprised about given that it's a prequel to Half-Life 2. One of my complaints with the game are these fucking sphere puzzles. These things actually fucking suck hot elephant ass, and the people that like them are fucking stupid. Most people have already made this complaint, and before you say anything, no, this is not a spoiler because it was shown in the fucking trailer. But I'll get into specifically why I dislike them when I get into my analysis later on. This game definitely only works in VR, which is probably the reason not as many people are talking about it. It's a shame that not many people will actually be able to play the game because of the high system requirements and having to own a VR headset. I dropped $1,000 on a Valve Index for this game, and currently the economy is going into a fucking recession, so it probably wasn't the best financial decision. If you have the money, I couldn't recommend this game more. Even if you have one of those cheaper Windows mixed reality headsets, if you have the ability to drop hundreds of dollars on a VR headset and have a decent PC, then yes, this game is a must play. It's truly incredible that Valve, even after all these years, is still able to make a solid single-player game, let alone a Half-Life game. If you're not a fan of Half-Life, I'd recommend this game. The gameplay alone will keep you interested. Good gameplay. Detail pretty. Russell kind of has a nice ass. Nice. That part's a bit spoilery. Alright, so my part 1 video, I made a good amount of predictions, and I feel like it would be interesting if I were to go back to what I predicted in that first video and compare it to what actually happened in the game. So out of my total of 10 predictions, I got a score of 2 out of 10. Fuck yeah. Well, Paul, you did it. You made something good. Fuck you, time travel. Fucking the fuck plot. Now, if you're wondering why I'm celebrating that I got my predictions wrong, in case you didn't watch my last video, most of my predictions were extremely cynical and calculated, as in it's something that corporate assholes would write, and I'm glad to say that at least one thing I actually wanted to happen did in fact happen, along with many other things I didn't know I wanted. That one thing being that episode 2 is vital to the story. We'll get to that part later, because I have a lot to say before that point. I'm going to start the meat of the video with gameplay, and I should probably preface this by saying that a lot of the gameplay shown is from my first playthrough. At the time of writing this, I've played through the game from start to end 4 times. I should also say that my tracking was kind of fucking up, so every once in a while my hands would go flying off into the distance like rockets. I was told that this was due to the glare from my posters, but since I'm too lazy to take them down, and the frames are a pain in the ass to deal with, this is what you're gonna get, and you're gonna fucking like it. God damn it, you're gonna fucking like. So you start up the game and you're introduced to the new Valve Guy startup screen, which accompanies practically all of Valve's games, which, by the way, I'm quite happy they didn't reuse the same startup from the lab, because that one fucking sucked. But you might ask, oh, but FoofDeckman, what does that have to do with the game itself? Well, see, kind stranger, this has nothing to do with the game. I just wanted to point out the fact that I hated the lab startup screen, and really like this new one. Anyways, moving on. Unfortunately, I was figuring out how to record VR still, so I didn't get my first reaction to any of this, but most people would probably react by not saying anything. But given how much of a Valve shill I am here, you know what? I'll try and remake it. So after my shill brain disconnected, I plugged in my intellectual brain, closed the game, and took a walk outside, of course. But then I realized that The Last of Us Part 2 is now real life. Thank you, Reggie. So I went back inside, launched up the game, and started up the first chapter, Entanglement. Wow, it took me this long to get to the actual game. So this chapter starts you off at Alyx's apartment, looking out at City 17. As you can tell in this gameplay, I mostly just fucked around for 45 minutes in this small area. This entire level is an introduction to the basic mechanics of the game, while also reintroducing all of these Half-Life elements that we haven't seen in 12 years. You get reintroduced to Eli and Alyx, but also get introduced to this new character, Russell, who is the main side character and sort of the new Alyx Vance in comparison to Half-Life 2. You open doors, you push buttons, but who was flickering the lights? This whole introductory is a VR physics playground, besides the literal VR physics playground. Russell gives you a gun and the gravity gloves, also known as the Russells. So you take the train and go into the quarantine zone, which is basically the United States put in one game, because it's so fucking giant. I'll be going back throughout this video explaining this story when I start talking about the plot, which will come later. The game introduces you to the Alyx, which I'll be referring to throughout this video as the Alyx gun, because that's what I've known it by since Half-Life 2. But basically, it allows you to hack into different Combine equipment by shoving the gun into a little hole. Most of the time you get these fun little wire puzzles where you have to shove the Alyx gun at the wall, and it'll show like a little wire trail leading you to switch on to different power routes. Basically, you get to reroute different wires to open up passageways, turn on or off power, and a variety of other stuff. Most of these were really unique, and I liked the switch up. But that's not the only kind of puzzle. Oh, no, no, no. You would be foolish to think that. Oh, fuck, I guess I gotta talk about the circle puzzles now. These are one of the many things I didn't like about the game. I mean, they were fine at first, but then after seeing them for the 100th fucking time, they kinda got on my nerves. It's not like they were hard to do, it's just that by chapter 6 or 7, the game's pacing comes to a grinding halt every time these things appear. Supposedly this puzzle mechanic was repurposed from a development tech demo thing. It wasn't even originally meant for this game, and it kinda feels like it. Now there's several different circle puzzles, the first being the what I'm gonna call start-end puzzles. These puzzles have two movable pieces that you have to traverse over a circular plane to the other blue piece. Now, in the concept, this doesn't sound that hard, and it's not really at first, but as the game progresses, these puzzles become a pain in the ass. Add that with the fact that half of the time my hands would shoot off into the distance or burrow themselves underground, making me unable to accurately traverse them, made them feel tedious, and gave a God damn, not this shit again kind of feeling. There's this memory match sort of one that I kinda just half-assed and guessed on. This one in particular wasn't horrible, but I'd rather be doing something else than these puzzles. The wire puzzles were quite fun and unique, and I wish the game had more of those instead of these things. I also liked the tripwire puzzles, which only appeared 6 hours in for like 20 minutes of the game. They were quick and fun and didn't detach me from the game like the others did. Gun upgrade stations had a specific puzzle dedicated to them, and it was this circular line thing. That's a horrible name, but basically you have this center point and other out-of-bounds points forming lines. You basically have to move the center point to make it so that the line connects to all of the points. There's a shitty way of explaining it, but hopefully the gameplay sort of speaks for itself there. Which brings me to talking about the upgrade stations. So you collect these blue things called resin. You can pretty much find it everywhere in the game, but the more you get, the more you can upgrade your gun. This aspect encouraged me to explore a lot of the levels more than I would if that element wasn't in the game to begin with.
Bro, it's the Holy Bible of Christ.
The game plays a little sound cue when you're near one, so every time I heard it, I just freaked the fuck out, throwing shit everywhere against the walls, flipping over boxes, fucking beating the shit out of Combine in the fucking face. But once you get it, you can find these weapon upgrade stations. They're pretty frequently found throughout the game. Now when you put your weapon in it, it allows you to usually get more ammo per clip, different fire types and sights, along with some other stuff, you know, upgrades. This added element of, oh, I should be looking for X amount of resin to get the upgrades I want, is always in the back of your mind when playing. The weapon upgrades make the game feel different and powerful at points. From what I'm told, it's impossible to get all of the upgrades in one playthrough, but even with that factor, the upgrades definitely make a difference either way. Weapons and combat are really well done in this game. Since it's VR, the game usually doesn't put you up against too many enemies at once. Combat with the Combine, hey, I got it first try that time. Yeah, haha, fuck you! It's really well paced in regards to when the amount and difficulty of the enemies will increase. Every combat situation has several different ways of going about it, whether it be through spamming grenades you had stockpiled or using literally everything you've saved up throughout the past 2 hours, made every situation feel unique. Each combat zone had different places in which you could find supplies mid-battle, like health syringes. There's mostly always ammo around to collect in combat areas, so whenever you're low, you can easily just look around for a second and grab a clip. It's pretty much everywhere. A lot of areas had me hiding behind barricades and small objects before finally making a run for it. Most of the sneaking was done in one level, which I'll talk about later. Some enemies in the game have a weak point or easy tactic to take them out, some of which have one-hit kill areas. These Elements give a new aspect to taking down enemies besides just shooting blindly in their direction. The guns that are given to you throughout the game include the pistol, shotgun, and SMG. Just when you think you're getting used to one gun, brand new gun to fuck around with. The gun I found myself using the least was actually the shotgun. I seem to only save that for harder enemies like the heavy or reviver, and as you're getting new weapons, you're also able to upgrade the previously collected guns using the resin. While there's only 3 main weapons in the game doesn't feel like it needed any more than it had. The weapons and shooting mechanics felt solid. Surprisingly, I only hit my ceiling fan 4 times throughout the game, and that only happened when I was being attacked by a manhack or shooting a barnacle, so B+. I gave myself the plus because I graded my own paper. The fact that this game is able to balance new gameplay features upon each other like it's playing fucking 4D chess is beautiful. There's no other way to describe it. It felt like I was playing a compressed Half-Life 2, in a good way, of course. So there are a total of 11 chapters in this game. For this section of the video, I'll be talking about each at length. Like I previously said, the first level is an introduction to the different gameplay elements that you'll see throughout the game. Going into this game, I was extremely unsure of what to expect. I knew Eric Woolpall was behind it, but in my predictions video, I said that I thought the story was going to be a contrived time travel plot. Thank fucking God I was wrong on that front, because that would have sucked. That would have been awful. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you are reintroduced to Alyx and Eli Vance. Alyx is a pet snark and it's cute as shit and I want to fucking vor it. You're also introduced to the new character Russell. Russell's the main side character of the game and talks to Alyx pretty much throughout the entire runtime. Alyx checks in with her father, who is talking with Russell. They explain that they hacked into a Combine construction network, and Alyx explains that it's abandoned. You jump into an elevator shaft and you see your dad getting interrogated by Combine officers. Now, in my predictions video, I said that there would be some sort of element involving saving Eli Vance, and I guess I was right. In all fairness, that was probably the easiest prediction to make in that video, but it was something I got right. So haha, poopy, I got it, ah! Alyx runs into a bunch of Combine officers interrogating Eli, and they're both knocked out and brought into these different Combine transport vehicles. This is when the first chapter title appears. Before all of this was, I guess, just the prologue, but if you check in the menus during the game, it'll actually say that it's Entanglement. So there's this character you meet at the beginning of the game named Olga. Their name is never actually said, but that's what they're referred to in the files. Olga only appears twice in the entire game, and both appearances are from the first chapter. I know there was some sort of rewrite that happened around 2 years before release. I'm not sure if she had a bigger role or not, but it's just odd to have a character like this appear once or twice and then be forgotten about. The only thing this character does in its current state is world building. It definitely makes the world feel more alive as you see all of these citizens run in different directions. Anyway, Alyx is stuck in the transport vehicle and is saved by Russell, who's controlling a drone. Somehow Alyx doesn't die in this car crash, but okay, Valve. Russell's drone hands over this headset that connects directly to Russell. This is the main way that you communicate with Russell throughout the game. As a person who's been keeping up with the data mine, I'm quite sure that this headset was introduced during the rewrite. Let me take a few steps back and explain the rewrite for those of you confused. From what I've gathered, the playtesters that played the original version of the game liked the gameplay, but they kept telling the developers, hey, the game is great, but that story needs some fucking work. This coincides with Eric Woolpall returning to Valve sometime late 2018, so Woolpall rewrote the majority of the story alongside the newly hired Campo Santo team who developed Firewatch and were developing In the Valley of Gods. There was a lot of unused maps found from the data mining referring to an Eli's Manor, and a lot more levels dedicated to the beginning of the game. Supposedly the story revolved around saving the Vortigaunts exclusively, and then that somehow coincides with the Vault too. A lot of what actually changed between now and the rewrite is still pretty much unknown, besides what we have in the files. And yes, I know that saving the Vortigaunts is an element found in Half-Life Alyx today, but it doesn't play that big of a role and only happens once. Apparently going around and saving them was basically the entire game prior to the rewrite. So anyway, Wolpaw was hired and he cut the majority of these filler levels, and because of deadlines, they needed to find a way to give the player exposition while saving resources and time from making new levels. This is where the headset comes into play. Instead of getting a team of animators to mocap a character over and over again, giving you exposition, Valve instead got the voice actor of Russell to record voice lines for the headset, which, by the way, Russell in the files is codenamed Laszlo. I don't know what's up with that, but...
Still Laszlo. Someone's... You there! Stop where you are! Stay on the rocks! Don't step on the sand! It makes the antlions crazy! Laszlo, don't move! No. Help!
None of this is confirmed besides the rewrite and the levels, but that's my theory, and it makes sense to me with the information we have. And just to be clear, it's not my theory. Other people have brought this up, but I agree with this a fair bit. So Alyx escapes the crashed Combine transport and heads to Russell's lab. Russell is the comic relief of the game and definitely feels like Wolpaw's writing. The dialogue felt very Portal 2-esque instead of Half-Life, which is a good thing most of the time, but we'll get into that later. Russell explains to Alyx his plan to rescue Eli. Eli is going to be put on a train to Nova Prospect, and Alyx is going to try and stop the train before it reaches that point. Alyx gets on a train, which is for some reason in the backyard of Russell's lab. Russell hacks into the train and brings it all the way to the quarantine zone, where it gets jammed or some sort. This level serves the purpose of introducing you to the basics of combat in this game. You shoot barnacles, zombies, head crabs, the whole bunch. The first few chapters of this game act as a tutorial and are pretty linear and easy to understand. Just like the first chapter, it's very much a VR playground, except it doesn't actually have a VR playground. Shit game, 0 out of 5. Thank you. This level allows you to really fuck around with the gravity gloves, as you can grab a lot of different world objects to kill enemies with, like the propane tanks, which seem to be around every fucking corner. I really like the atmosphere of this level. It's the same level that was in the gameplay videos Valve showed off pre-release, which is this rundown subway area. The quarantine zone's rundown atmosphere makes the area feel realistic. There's advertisements on the walls mentioning water. This is reference to the famous quote in Half-Life 2 about the Combine putting something in the water.
Don't drink the water. They put something in it to make you forget. I don't even remember how I got here.
Mostly everything that would be consumable in world has the tag water flavored, which I find fucking funny, because this is an interesting way of world building that I haven't really seen in any other game. Between both the gameplay and story, it's a beautiful balancing act. Zombies, much like Half-Life 2, cry for help, and it really sets the ominous tone of this chapter. Unfortunately, a lot of Russell's dialogue sort of fucks up the mood and atmosphere. Say at one point there's something extremely graphic, and then it's completely undermined with Russell dialogue. The dialogue removes a lot of the fear factor that this game should be giving. I enjoy Russell as a character, but this issue happens a lot throughout the game and isn't just exclusive to this one chapter and can get irritating. I know that the Half-Life games in general haven't really taken themselves too seriously, but there are definitely more serious moments from the Half-Life series, like Ravenholm from Half-Life 2. Imagine if during Ravenholm you had a voiceover from a character saying,
"Oh, funny that she mentioned that, Gordon. In fact, there are many head crabs just like that. Be careful, Gordon. Gordon, be careful. Holy crap, that's crazy, Gordon. Were you actually thinking of dropping down from that height, Gordon? You're gonna kill yourself, Gordon. Are you trying to hurt yourself, Gordon? Gordon, are you okay? Those jumping things are everywhere, all over you. Gordon, look, ropes. Help me, Gordon."
Obviously, with Wolpaw being like the main writer behind the project instead of Mark Laidlaw like the other games, I expected this game to be a lot more comedic in comparison to the Half-Life games. While this is definitely true, I feel a lot of that sort of undermines the tension of certain parts of the game. After Alyx makes her way through the quarantine zone, she runs into a Vortigaunt who is disconnected from the Vortessence. This entire cutscene is perfectly executed in my eyes. It has touching moments while also being light-hearted.
I have a brain injury.
Oh, I'm sorry
My brain is injured.
That's terrible,
Ow.
and I hope...
Alyx promises the Vortigaunt that she'll help find the captured Vortigaunts after she saves Eli. The Vortigaunt tells Alyx that she should look to the Northern Star for guidance. She just sort of rubs this off as some sort of weird Vortigaunt speak, but anyway. Now this is when the real horror part of this game starts. Most of this chapter takes place in extremely dark areas and reminds the player that, yeah, Half-Life can be fucking terrifying. This chapter is extremely long, and I was at this chapter for a good amount of time. And this is when the hand-holding from the first 2 chapters starts to fade. Chapter 3 is when the real shit happens. This is when boys turn into almost a man. Almost. This chapter introduces you to the new headcrab type and the return of the poison headcrab, as well as the Combine soldiers. This level really shows the beauty of the level design. There's this one part where there's propane tanks everywhere, and if you accidentally hit one, you're dead. This element, along with the fact that you're in the complete dark with only a flashlight and a gun surrounded by enemies that you can't see half the time unless you're pointing your flashlight directly at them, makes this entire chapter unique. Alyx is in pursuit of stopping the train that holds her father. This entire section is one of those parts in particular that I couldn't see working without VR. It's extremely effective at getting you on edge but not scaring the player away. Alyx is able to crash the train in time and ends up derailing it and crashes the train into a giant fucking building, literally knocking over everything in sight. And probably, you know, there probably was a fair few people in that area, but I guess they're all gone now. On the plus side, it's a great looking set piece. Alyx enters the crashed train looking for her father, only to see him dangling above a giant pit. He then falls, and then he just dies. And then the game cuts to credits. Really odd choice by the developers to end the game like that. But suddenly, the Vortigaunt from earlier lifts up Eli and saves him. This scene didn't feel very tense to me. He obviously was going to be alive in Half-Life 2, so why should I feel any worry for his well-being if I know that the character is going to be fine? So Eli explains to Alyx that the reason he was captured because he saw schematics of some sort of vault containing a superweapon. This plotline turns into a main thrusting point of the story from here on out. Chapter 3 is one of my favorites of the game. However, Chapter 4... However, Chapter 4 feels pretty underwhelming in comparison to Chapter 3. It's not bad, but it doesn't feel as unique. Besides not really being unique, this chapter is quite short as well. It does have this one element of gathering keycards to open doors. This feature is never brought back throughout the entire game again, but it didn't really feel like it needed to be there in the first place. If these keycards weren't there, this chapter would be around like 5 minutes. Alyx continues through the subway and ends up discovering the vault in the sky. Somehow nobody saw this giant fucking thing, but okay, it's kinda huge. Okay, Valve! You're also introduced to the heavy Combine. They basically have a shitload of health, a shotgun, and when they want to, a giant shield. The heavy gives a new flavor to the combat, and their shields make you think about your next attack, as there are several different effective ways of taking those fuckers out. That's basically it for Chapter 4. Anyway... This entire chapter takes place inside the Northern Star Hotel. You can go into the hotel, play Megalovania, and then you eventually get back to the story. Most of this part just feels kind of filler, story-wise at least, and also introduces you to the Reviver. They call it the Lightning Dog in-game, but I was told that the proper name for it is the Reviver, so I'll be calling it that. I'm not a fan of the Reviver. It's mostly just a bullet sponge without much strategy behind it. I wasted so much ammo shooting it, and it appears so much throughout this chapter. It's called the Reviver because it revives dead zombies and turns them into this electric zombie, basically a 2-in-1 enemy, but when it's in zombie form, it can shock the ground and lead a lightning trail to your location. It's extremely easy to dodge, but for some reason the game gives you a shitload of time to move away from it. I don't know if it increases on difficulty, but I was playing on normal throughout the whole game. I hope it increases in difficulty, because the Reviver wasn't necessarily hard to take out. It's just a nuisance. You can get the Reviver out of the zombie by shooting these glowing blue spots until it explodes. Towards the end of the chapter, when you finally get outside of the hotel, you'll be able to rescue a Vortigaunt. At this point in the game, you learn that the wires holding up the vault are created by the Vortigaunts inside the Combine pods, but you never need to rescue any others since the Vortigaunts do it themselves throughout the game, so it's not that important. Now let's talk about the best thing in this level. The piano. Yes, the piano. So, some developer at Valve was like, hey, you know what? What if we add a fully functional piano to the lobby of the Northern Star? This piano is fucking awesome. I love the piano. Oh yeah, and the level is, much like Chapter 4, this chapter is quite short. It's pretty much all combat without any breaks. The layout of this level is extremely unique. It has you jumping between buildings and fucking up Combine almost constantly. This felt a lot like the escape sequence from the beginning of Half-Life 2, but for VR. You're also introduced to the trip mines, which I previously talked about. The Combine figure out that you have information about the vault. At one point, they even start calling out for Alyx over the radio chatter and the Overwatch, which is actually pretty great attention to detail. The way the Combine soldiers interact with each other is a lot like Half-Life 2, but it feels more complicated. The Combine soldiers will interact with each other based on your movements. Say if you're frantically looking around and hiding behind cover, the soldiers will talk to each other and say, "Hostile is scrambled." It's pretty impressive the lengths they're able to take the AI in this game. There's not much else to talk about with this chapter, so I'm just going to skip right to the next chapter. It's the chapter. My personal favorite chapter in the entire game. I'm sure most of you have heard something about Helen Keller, I mean Jeff, but let me just say that this is the worst level in the game because not once did someone utter the words, "I'm Jeff." 0 out of 5. Shit fucking game. Having no prior knowledge of Jeff, I went into this chapter completely blind. Get it? 'Cause he can't see? I'm funny fucking laugh. This entire level scared the absolute shit out of me. I was acting like a pussy throughout every second. For those of you unfamiliar, let me just explain this chapter in detail. So Alyx has to get through a distillery to get to the next objective, but there's this zombie named Jeff. Jeff is a blind zombie and completely relies on audio to navigate. Since it's in a distillery, you throw bottles at the walls and floor and lead Jeff to different areas of the map. There's this mechanic introduced and only used in this particular level that revolves around spores. These spores cause Alyx to cough if you go near them, but you can hold your breath by covering your mouth with your hand or finding a gas mask to avoid coughing. I didn't know about the gas mask thing on my first playthrough, so I just used my hand. Now Jeff has spores on his back, and since you have to sneak around him every time he walks past, you gotta sit still and hold your breath. This level is probably the most intense I felt in a video game ever. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I genuinely had goosebumps going down my arm. You basically have to navigate the entire level with Jeff on your ass. There's this one part where you have to crank a valve to open a door, but every time you do, it just makes a shitload of noise and Jeff comes near. So you have to trap him in a room and lock the door to turn the valve, but right after that, the power goes out, so you have to follow this wire to turn back on the power, and as soon as I saw that I had to let Jeff loose, I started to freak the fuck out. Holy shit! There's this insignificant character named Larry you save from a barnacle attack at the beginning of the chapter. This character's a lot like Olga from the prologue, where in this case Larry doesn't have much of a presence. He's only seen in this specific chapter, and his main purpose is to warn you about Jeff and explain his mechanics. He then fucking disappears from existence and comes back right towards the end after you lock Jeff in a trash compactor, and he's like, hi, bye! Good old Larry, that character. This entire level had me on edge. This chapter is the best experience I've had in VR, and definitely my favorite chapter of Half-Life Alyx. Good job, Valve. You still got it. This level, for the most part, takes place completely inside an abandoned zoo. This unique environment helps with the world building, but also reintroduces us to Antlion. There's this fun little interaction between Alyx and Russell during the beginning of this chapter.
Leggy! Oh no, shit.
That's an antlion, Russell.
That's an antlion?
Yes. So you do know what antlions are.
Yes, they're leggies.
Which I thought was fun and cute. The antlions themselves have changed significantly from Half-Life 2. They now have 3 weak points, both their legs and their ass. Shooting their ass usually makes them explode in one hit, but shooting their legs first makes their ass easier to shoot. There's lots of unique areas you can explore here if you want to. You can actually learn some real information on different animals by reading the informational panels in front of the displays. You can grab these animal masks and actually wear them. Pretty great attention to detail. Later in this chapter, Eli discovers something interesting about the superweapon and says this.
I got something. What is it?
Yeah. What is it, Dad?
It doesn't look like they actually built the weapon. It's like they, I don't know, discovered something. Or maybe they uncovered it.
Time
What do you
travel. Time
I'm reading this. They tracked it to an old apartment building in the QZ, but instead of going in to get it, they grabbed the whole building and built a vault around it.
Holy crap. They must have been terrified of this thing.
I'm trying to figure out whether we ought to be.
The way the writers are slowly able to unravel the true purpose of the vault is very well executed. This part of the story always kept me intrigued because at this point I had no idea where the story was headed. My predictions were basically wrong and I just didn't know what to look for. Eli then follows what he just said up later with this.
What now?
Wait, Dad, what?
It's not a vault. It's a prison. They didn't build it to keep us out. They're trying to keep something in.
Keep what in?
I don't know. I'm not sure if this data part even knows. But they got something trapped in there.
Oh. Okay. So if it's not a weapon, are we still doing this?
The way I see it, whatever's in there doesn't like the Combine very much. So we got that in common.
True.
So, are we still doing it?
It's this area.
We've come this far. I say we keep going. And if you find out it's something we really shouldn't mess with, we'll call it off.
That's my girl. I'll let you know what I find out.
This line of dialogue didn't really need to be included as soon as it did. This line only appears after like a 10-minute gap between the last line, and I feel a bit more of a time split between them would have made this line better executed. This level is actually fairly short, but pretty unique while it lasts, and introduces a lot of new story elements that help ramp the story up towards the finale. Now, this is where the game really starts to ramp up towards the finale. I know I said that in the last chapter, but this is where it really starts to push towards that. You get out of the sewer area and are immediately brought to the surface. Unfortunately, I'm not that big of a fan of this level as a whole, but in terms of story, this is when it really picks up. You're immediately shown the vault barely hanging on in the sky as the last substation is taken out, and the vault starts to fall, but is caught mid-air by some sort of backup combine system. Now, the main objective has changed to destroy that backup system. This level felt very arcade shooter-esque. It's hard to explain, but I'll try my best using this comparison. It felt like one of those games in an arcade where you have to sit in a booth and shoot things with a plastic gun. While this is a really weird criticism to make, I definitely felt that way when playing it, and it kind of hurt my experience. I think it was too much combat back-to-back for stuff to really feel grounded. This is definitely the most cluttered level in terms of flow and pacing, as the game just spawns a shitload of enemies on you at once. There is a new character introduced in this chapter. This person was given no name, so I'm going to be referring to them as Shadow Scientist Lady, as you never see their face. And when you do see their face is literally a shadow. So, Shadow Scientist Lady. She talks to an advisor on a monitor.
Hi, okay, great, finally, hi. We need to move the box, or this thing is going to be Black Mesa all over again. Well, now I'm telling you it is, Fred. Look, if it's still here when she gets there, he's gone. What in the history of today makes you think you're going to stop her? Look, this guy we've got in there survived Black Mesa. He raised holy hell and then just disappeared. We finally caught him and you're just going to let him go again? Move the box!
Survived Black Mesa, then disappeared. Eli, they do have a super weapon.
God damn it, Russ, they got Gordon Freeman.
Oh, wow. That's good, right?
This is very, very good.
This is a miracle.
All right. So, let's go save Gordon Freeman.
This unfortunately is the only scene with Shadow Scientist Lady. I have a feeling that in the future Half-Life games, if there is any, she'll probably return, but for now, this little scene is all we have to go off of for her character. Most people seem to believe that this Shadow Scientist Lady is actually Mossman, even though canonically that would make absolutely no sense, and you all are fucking idiots for guessing that. Eric, I swear to God, if you make that Mossman, I take back everything I said for this game, okay? You hear me, sir? Like I said, the chapter was fine, but definitely weaker. Also, this door puzzle at the end just fucking sucked. I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure it out, and I thought I was doing it wrong. Fuck that shit. This is kind of the last main level of the game. You'll understand what I mean when I say main level in a bit when I talk about the final chapter of the game. This level takes everything you've learned as a player from the previous chapters and puts them on full display. There's horror elements, unique puzzles, and combat. Pretty amazing action set pieces as well. Alyx approaches the backup generator, and her dad tells her that she'll be able to extend a bridge. Now, given the fantastic hacker man I am, I was able to fix the bridge all the way to the vault.
Alyx! Alyx!
After having giant pieces of rubble land on Alyx as she stands up completely fine, not only that, but she's well enough to have a fucking boss battle with the Strider. I was kind of spoiled by the Strider inclusion, unfortunately, but I didn't realize it would be a full-on boss fight. The pacing of this battle is kind of all over the place. It has a lot of different environments throughout, mixed with Combine fights. I'd much rather the Combine fights not be there. I would have liked this battle a lot more if it's specifically focused on the Strider itself. Instead, you have to wander around the map until you reach a turret, then spam grenades until you kill the Strider. The boss battle was fine, but it could have been better. After you kill the Strider using a giant grenade turret, you have the chance to get sucked up into the vault. As Russell's connection starts to break between him and Alyx, as you get beamed into the vault, Eli barges in and yells,
What? Why?
Dad?
well, I guess it's finally time to talk about the final chapter. Chapter 11, Point Extraction. While being lifted up into the vault, all of your weapons and equipment besides the Russells were taken from you, so you're completely helpless during combat, or so it would seem. As mentioned earlier by Eli, the Combine built this vault around an old apartment complex, so most of this level takes place inside different apartments. You start out by wandering through worn-out apartment building. You see silhouettes of citizens as you pass by. From the looks of it, these player models, they look like they're citizens from Half-Life 2 who mostly wore blue uniforms. I'm not entirely sure of the significance of that, but it's definitely something to note. As you wander around, you see floating objects all over the place until you reach a balcony. This is where you can see the center of the vault through this amazing looking set piece. Holy fucking Christ. As you keep navigating the apartment complex, things begin to get weirder and weirder. The walls start to become the ceiling, and the ceiling starts to become the walls. Everything becomes twisted until at one point, when you finally reach the entranceway to the center, Alyx runs into some Combine officers, but at first, you aren't sure what to do since you're completely unarmed. So you absorb this green energy on the wall into the gravity gloves and are able to blast it at enemies. At this point in the gameplay, I start to laugh maniacally. This was a clear attempt by Valve to recreate the physics gun section from the end of Half-Life 2. Now see, I used the word attempt because for some reason they take the power away from you and force you to use grenades. I can tell that they were going for some sort of section that makes you feel powerful like they did with Half-Life 2, but then why randomly take that power away only to give it back seconds later? I just don't understand it. I know this seems like a small thing to complain about, but I died at this section multiple times because my grenades kept angling towards the ceiling, and I couldn't get the right angle with the low gravity, and it completely kills the momentum and pacing. And I wish it was just a full-on power rush to the center. So after you defeat the rest of the Combine soldiers, you finally reach the bridge where you see a silhouette of what you thought was Gordon, but in fact ends up being... That's a achievement. That's achievement. Yep. The G-Man. Plot twist! I'm going to be playing my reaction to the ending in its entirety alongside the monologue. I'll be discussing my thoughts on it after the clip is finished, but skip to this timestamp if you don't want to watch the ending to Half-Life Alyx.
Impressive work. Miss Vance.
Gordon Freeman?
Gordon Freeman. Miss Vance, you wouldn't need all that to imprison Gordon Freeman.
So, who are you?
Perhaps what I am is not as important as what I can offer you in exchange for coming all this way. Some believe the fate of our worlds is inflexible. My employers disagree. They authorize me to nudge things in a particular direction from time to time. What would you want nudged, Miss Vance?
The Combine off Earth. I want the Combine off Earth.
That would be a considerably large nudge. Too large, given the interests of my employers.
Well, you asked.
What if I could offer you something you don't know you want?
Dad? What? Is that me? What is this? What's happening?
We are in the future. This is the moment where you watch your father die. Unless...
What? Unless what?
Unless you were to take matters into your own hands.
Christ.
Release your father, Miss Vance. Good. As a consequence of your action, this entity will continue, and this entity will not.
Right. So he's okay, right? He lives. My dad lives.
You are aware that you've proven yourself to be of extraordinary value. A previous hire has been unable or unwilling to perform the tasks laid before him. We have struggled to find a suitable replacement until now.
No! I just want to go home. Send me home!
I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation, Miss Vance.
Wait! Hey, wait! Wait! Wait!
What the fuck? Holy shit.
So, as you can tell from that, I cried. It's extremely hard to get me to cry from playing a video game, but being as big of a Half-Life fan I am, and waiting years for a moment like this just kind of broke me. Now, writing this a few weeks after my reaction, I can say with certainty that while I don't feel the same way I do now as I did in that moment, I still feel pretty highly about this ending. It is a retcon of the ending of episode 2, but I'm glad something was at least done with it, because as it was before, nothing was being done with it. Now here's where my other prediction comes into play. I said that Episode 2 was vital to the game. It wasn't vital in the way I thought it was going to be, but if you had never played Episode 2 before Half-Life Alyx, I can't imagine you would understand or get as much from this ending as I did. From the looks of it, it seems like the G-Man purposely got himself caught. He wanted to find a successor to Gordon, since over Episodes 1 and 2, Gordon wasn't compliant with the G-Man. Since Alyx was able to break the G-Man out of the vault, she would obviously be a great candidate, which is most likely why she's left in the same position Gordon was at the end of Half-Life 1. Now, there's a giant problem with this ending, which might be explained in a later game, because this seems like too big of a plot hole to get overlooked. Since Alyx was stuck in cryosleep at the end of the game, how do the events of Half-Life 2 happen? Does this mean Alyx from Half-Life 2 was a clone? She couldn't have escaped, or else they wouldn't have made such a big deal of her getting hired. Thinking back on the ending leaves me with a lot of questions, which is good. For the most part, this game's story felt uneventful, and if it didn't have the Episode 2 stuff at the end, the game probably wouldn't feel very memorable, at least story-wise. From a gameplay standpoint, fuck yeah, this game is awesome. Now, I'd assume that Gordon is now, I guess, fired by the G-Man. Speaking of Gordon, I guess I should play the post-credits scene, so here's my initial reaction to the post-credits scene, and if you want to skip it, go to this timestamp. It was already...
Warning. Vital signs critical. Seek medical attention.
Gordon! Gordon! Wake up, Gordon. She's gone, Gordon. She's gone. Son of a bitch, it has unforeseen consequences. I knew it. When you get my hands on him, I'm gonna kill him. I gotta figure this out. Right now. Come on, Gordon. We got work to do.
No, come back. Fuck. Holy shit. What the fuck? I'm almost 100% sure this confirmed Half-Life 3. Something that was memed about for over a decade. I've waited so long for that moment of confirmation that it just sort of shattered me. Again, more so than the ending of the game itself. I'm more looking forward to future games now. I really liked Half-Life Alyx, but I just gotta say, I really hope Valve doesn't make Half-Life 3 in VR. Please make it non-VR. Half-Life Alyx was great, alright? It's a miracle that the game turned out as good as it did. But I know the majority of people would be incredibly pissed off if they released Half-Life 3 in VR. Valve, if you're somehow listening to this video with probably 10 views on it, don't make Half-Life 3 in VR. This post-credit scene got me extremely excited for Half-Life again and wanting more. I haven't felt that way in years because I never thought I'd get anything from this franchise again. Half-Life is something that holds a very special place in my heart. All I ask, Valve, please, do not fuck it up. Now that my main analysis of the game is over, I want to state some things that aren't released by Valve at the time of recording this for Half-Life Alyx. The Final Hours documentary isn't out yet. During my part 1 video, I was under the impression that the documentary was going to come out the same day as the game. Unfortunately, it didn't, and currently its Twitter account hasn't posted anything since the 25th of March, and I'm recording this on April 15th. Hopefully it's still coming out, because I really want to watch that and learn some background information on the development of the game. The Source 2 tools of Half-Life Alyx have yet to release alongside the workshop. I was also under the impression that these features would be there at launch, but I guess I was wrong. There's already a shitload of custom maps being made, and I've played a fair few of them, and for the most part they hold a lot of promise. The maps themselves are extremely short, buggy, and unpolished, but I feel that once we get our hands on the Source 2 tools, we'll start to see more amazing content being made. I didn't mention the Source 2 tools in my Part 1 video. I'm pretty excited for them either way. From what I've gathered, Valve is planning on releasing more Half-Life VR games. While this is a good thing overall, I feel it's probably going to get a fair few people angry if these games come out prior to a traditional non-VR Half-Life game. My prediction for Valve is that they're probably going to be releasing a shitload more VR games, most likely from franchises other than Half-Life in the coming years. They'd be stupid to sell the public on a $1,000 VR headset and then not release any other games for it. As it stands, VR games are in a very weird place. Half-Life Alyx will hopefully light the flame that carries this genre into the next generation. There's not really any other game like it on the market right now, and I hope that more AAA studios start making VR games because of this. I know people are already working on a non-VR Half-Life Alyx mod, and I've played the non-VR component that was available to use somewhat in a broken manner from the day one build of the game, but I feel if people get this to work properly, it'll probably end up being disappointing and underwhelming, and probably not what people want. Hopefully the future of the Half-Life series is bright and we don't get another episode 2 situation where we have to wait 12 years for another entry. As it stands right now, I'm pretty willing to talk about anything Valve related on this channel. I'll be talking about other things besides Valve, like other games, movies, TV shows, etc. Supposedly that CSGO Source 2 port is right around the corner, so hopefully if that does come out, I'll be making a video on it, as well as any other game that Valve decides to release within the next few years. I'm sorry that this video took around a month to get out. It's pretty lengthy, but I had a lot to say about the game. I know that most of you probably didn't stay around for the entire video, but that's okay. But for those of you that did stay around for this long, holy shit, thank you. I worked so hard on this video. I love you. You're my favorite. I want to give a big thanks to my good friend Parker, or Primo, who's been helping me with my videos. To be completely honest, I don't think any of these videos I've posted recently would have gotten finished if it weren't for him, so thank you. Love you, man. This coronavirus thing has been kind of fucking over my plans for the Ready Player One video, so I'm not entirely sure when that'll come out anymore. I've also decided to restart the script because I didn't really like where it was going. But what I will say is that it'll get done when it'll get done. It's a very important project to me, and I want to get it right. It's just sort of all over the place right now. Thank you for watching and putting up with my shit. I know this was a fucking long video, and if you're new to my channel, thanks for giving me a try. Anyway, goodbye.